is upon us. Welcome in to the latest and greatest episode of the Hoops Boys podcast. Your host with the most, James the Jet, America's favorite bitch-ass white boy, CProc. We have our guest analyst here, as per usual, Greggers and The Shaddillac. Partner, before we bring the fellas in, let's unbox a rather overbearing storyline in the race leading up to these play-in games. This wonderful little tournament that the NBA's tested out the last few years, and with a team that very much collapsed down the stretch and should have not even been in the play-in tournament. They should have been well above this because they were as high as 3 or 4 during the season.
Yeah.
What happened to the Mavericks?
I call conspiracy. They don't want to give the Knicks that pick, so they sailed it in. They mailed it in for the season. But I mean, prior to that, them getting Kyrie Irving, it seemed like Luka got the second start they needed. But we all know that their defense was gonna take a hit because they traded away like their only few defensive players that they had. They don't have size, so and it showed. But I think once they fill the team out, they're going to be fine. But this season ended in a failure, and but I still call conspiracy.
Greg, you brought up something interesting off air about this possible conspiracy with why they're not playing right now. What you got to share a little bit on?
Well, I mean, I think in general, I mean, this is, the league is not going to look well upon this. I mean, with a couple games left, they admitted Jason Kidd was pretty honest and said everything without saying it, that they're sitting Kyrie and Doncic for the long-term benefit of the franchise. The only thing that can mean, and he doesn't need to spell it out, is they're trying to lose that game to not get in the playoffs because that pick was top 10 protected. Mm-hmm. So if they make the 10th seed, they lose that pick to the Knicks. But, in this day and age, I mean, the NBA, I don't have the number in front of me, how many years the play-in's been in effect. It's within the last 5 years. They make a big deal to promote this, to keep teams invested in the season. If I'm Silver or the league commissioners, I mean, this is a debacle. It really is. I think you can see anything from a substantial fine to, quite frankly, being stripped of a pick, maybe even that pick. When you're outward about the fact, to the NBA, this is the integrity of the league, the franchise, etc. You're trying to not make the playoffs. You say what you want. The 10 seed we've seen 8 seeds. The Knicks as an 8 seed went to the finals. Mm-hmm. It's not impossible when you have Kyrie and Luka Doncic. Granted, as James alluded to, the defense stinks. There's no rebounding, but you still have 2 mega superstars on that team. I honestly, if I was a fan, I think that's terrible, and I would not be surprised to see the league come down heavily on that, because you're trying to not make the playoffs. That invalidates a large part of their business model and this huge success that these play-in games were. And you've basically said, the hell with that. We're saving a pick for next year. So just my opinion, I think the league will and should come down heavy on the Mavs. I do.
Shad, I want to call back to a Shad Stradamus moment a couple months ago. But before I do that, do you have any thoughts on this potential hot water that they could be getting into?
Well, I think it's conspiracy, but I think it's opposite of what the reasons you guys said. I think the NBA wants to get Luka with a true superstar, and then everybody's been saying that this next draft is going to have 3 superstars at the top, and I think the Mavs will conveniently get one of those top 3 draft picks in the lottery to pair with Luka. I think Kyrie, he's going to leave after the season, and they're going to need somebody. He's going to leave regardless unless they win the championship, just because he seems like he wants to play with LeBron somehow. So I think he's out regardless, out to LA next season. I think this is just a way to kind of make good on the Mavs for taking over for Kyrie and just pairing somebody with Luka, because Luka is a transcendent talent. He's easily, top 10, top 5 player in the league. I think this just gives him this will be like the most marketable team, one of the most marketable teams in the next, 5 to 10 years if they get one of these top 3 picks, and which I think they will get. I think it's more of a chemistry issue. I don't think they really, the Mavericks didn't give up too much to get Kyrie, at least like not in the immediately. They only gave up, Spencer Dinwiddie and Dorian Finney-Smith and like a few, like give 3 draft picks, 1 first round and 2 second rounders. So it's not like they gave up a whole hell of a lot. But I just think Kyrie, he's just like a cancer to his teams. I don't think he knows how to play second fiddle to anybody really, maybe besides LeBron. He just thinks like, he thinks he's like, Steph Curry, a smaller guy who just could, who could score and lead a team to multiple championships. He's just not that player. He is more of a number 2, and I just don't think he realizes it. And he in order for him to, realize that, he's going to need a extremely alpha male. And I don't think he's had that since he left, LeBron. So he's going to be a headache wherever he goes, unless he goes to a big alpha male like that.
Well, you did kind of call this when the trade went down, that they weren't going to fit together. It wasn't going to work. And, here are the Mavs, they finally make this push to get Luka his sidekick, and it blew up in their face. So do you want to dust some dirt off your shoulder and wear the Nostradamus cap?
Yeah, I'll wear it for, a little bit. But no, it's just, I don't know if it's really predicting or just like looking at facts of what Kyrie has done for, what seems like the past 5 or 6 years everywhere he's went. He's almost like Antonio Brown crazy. And he's better. He thinks he's better than he really is. And he's an Indian, not a chief. And he thinks he's a chief. So like I said, unless you get like that older vet, who's kind of proven himself, who's a real alpha male, he's just always going to kind of do his own thing, and it's going to mess up the team chemistry. And I think this is what happened here in Dallas. You had like a LeBron-esque, player in Luka, but I don't think Luka is really too much of an alpha male leader. He's kind of like, he does his own thing, but like he's not too much of a headache, but he constantly needs the ball. He might be the biggest, I guess, quote unquote, ball hog in the league. Like he's going to get you fantastic numbers, but he probably doesn't play well with others unless they're like role players. So I knew it wasn't going to fit from the start.
Jet and Greg, any thoughts on this marriage that probably looked better on paper than what it really played out to be?
I honestly think that I do feel, a part of me does feel like Kyrie might leave in free agency, but I've been reading the blogs, and it seems like the Mavs do want to re-sign him. I don't know if he will re-sign, but they want to re-sign him. I think this small sample size, if they have like a full team that complements the both of them, I think it'll work. But I don't know if we'll get to see it though.
I'm a little with James as well. We know I've been very clear about my disdain for Kyrie and what, just his mood swings, and honestly, like, the turmoil he brought to the Nets. I'm with James on this one though. I can't exclusively kill Kyrie on this one. It is a very small sample size. He played pretty well with the Mavericks. So I think I don't want to say a pass, but I think this was more a chemistry. I'm of the belief if they had more time, they would have found themselves in the playoffs, and if they decided to try not to, but that's besides the point. So I do think it's a smaller sample size. And I understand how great Luka is. Personally, I think Luka takes a little bit of a hit here. I mean, he's supposed to be the leader of this team. I mean, granted, their defensive shortcomings, their rebounding were what did them in. So I'm not going to go all anti-Kyrie on this one, but I think Luka takes somewhat of a hit here. I mean, if you're going to be the leader, the alpha male, like you still should get the team into the 10 seed. I'm a firm believer in that. When you have those two guys, you make it work somehow. So anyhow, but I like I said, I just agree with James. I think the sample size is small. I don't think Kyrie is the guy you should tie your boat to for the franchise ever, because he might decide the world is flat again, and that boat might go over the flat end of the world, to use an analogy. So, but I think sample size is a little too small. But the Mavs on a whole, the team, Luka, the franchise, they take the bigger hit in this one. That was a debacle, in my opinion. But not, I don't put that solely on Kyrie. I do not.
All right, well, let's talk about teams that actually are going to be playing. We got some games coming up very shortly, and let's count this up. The red hot Lakers, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9 of their last 11 games they won. Shad, tell us why the Lakers are going to win the NBA championship. Starting with
He still has the crown on. He didn't take the crown off either. So
Yeah, you just know because it's the GOAT, because of LeBron James. That's primary reason number one.
yeah.
The second reason is because mid-season around the trade deadline, they retooled their team. They kind of went back to what worked for LeBron in the past. They kind of got a little bit more shooting around him. They got more athleticism, and they got more people who just kind of know their role. And they had the emergence of people, people like Austin Reeves, who, played almost like a Jeremy Lin type of role, for, I don't know, a 5-game stretch or so, where it seemed like he was at a superstar level. They got, D'Angelo Russell, who seems like he's a good, number 3 option, playing that point guard. Dennis Schroeder, he stepped up in the meantime. He started playing, better like he did a few years ago in the bubble. They got, a big guy who can kind of shoot, definitely can defend in the paint, and Mo Bamba. They got Malik Beasley, who is like a great, off the bench type of 6-man role who could fill up a stat sheet when possible, when he needs to be possible. They got Jared Vanderbilt, who's been good over the years with the Timberwolves. And then, of course, they got Anthony Davis, who's been relatively healthy, down the stretch. Hopefully he doesn't pull a hamstring, rip a fingernail, something like that, and he's out for the rest of the playoffs, because he is an impact player. He plays on some nights like he's an MVP candidate. Just a matter, he's just not very consistent, and he gets injured a lot. So I think, with the way they've been playing, I think they can win the championship. And just the matchups that they do have, I think, they're going to, beat the Timberwolves, in that first playing game, and which will give them a matchup with, Memphis. And I think that could be a great matchup for them, because I don't think they have the leadership like the Lakers do. I don't think they have the experience like the Lakers do. And I think, they're going to try to get into the Lakers' head. People like Dylan Brooks is going to try to get in LeBron's head, and that just always turns LeBron up. He might, be a little relaxed for parts of the game, but, Dylan Brooks gets in his face. It's going to be like the NBA Finals all again when Draymond Green started to be like that with LeBron, and LeBron just going to go into GOAT mode. So, like I said, it all starts with LeBron, but they did a good job of retooling, and the chemistry is there, and they had people step up, and Anthony Davis has been healthy.
Greg, tell us why this team is still an abject disaster.
Well, let me preface this by saying, after listening to Shad talk so eloquently about them, I wish my water bottle was straight vodka after watching the Lakers for 2-3 years. Okay, now, objectively, okay, I will agree. They made a lot of moves to the surrounding cast is a lot better. They're far more functional a team. I watched Friday night. Friday night's actually a good example of why I think they're better and why I don't think they'll do anything going forward as well. Friday night, they were languishing against the Suns' second unit. But to their credit, someone they brought in, Malik Beasley, probably hit about 4 threes in the third quarter. And actually when they need them, they were a little bit, I don't want to say on the ropes, but they were, down 5-7 most of the game. His shooting got them back in the game. LeBron had an absolutely awful game. At one point, he had 9 points and 5 turnovers. Not trying to dump on him individually, just so their surrounding cast can get them a win when it's not, LeBron going for 40 and 20 and AD. He had a monster game on the boards, but you get the point. It doesn't have to be their A+ performance every night. That being said, I'll use that same game as an example. They put on a nice run. They do have surrounding pieces. Even someone like Austin Reeves, quite frankly, Austin Reeves has played some good minutes for them. Like, he's really improved as a player. You're right, Hachimura coming in. They definitely are better than they were. I'll get back to what I've been harping on the last 2-3 years. I'm not one bit convinced. I mean, we're coming off LeBron just missing how many games? I'm not convinced for 1 second. The playoff round could last 20, 21, 28 games. At no point in this do I think him and Anthony Davis both stay healthy. I think that's been the major harbinger for them for a couple of years now. So for that reason alone, I mean, as the playoffs wear on, if they get through the first round, which I'm not saying it's impossible, they're good enough to upset someone at this point. I'll agree with Shad on that. I don't think long term this team will do that. LeBron, there is tread on the tires. AD's been great, but again, when has AD stayed healthy for 2 straight months? For that reason alone, I'm being serious. Like, and I don't think LeBron at this age, and it's not a cut, he's going to have it every night, that he's going to have a Game 7 performance every time. So I just think the depth of the playoffs, the length, the wear and tear it took them to get into the playoff spot as they did, which is a good accomplishment considering where they were. I don't see it lasting long. I do not. Maybe an upset, but not beyond that.
Partner, their opponent in this game is the occupant of the Lakers franchise's former home, Minneapolis.
Yeah.
And the Timberwolves have had some drama recently coming into this game. Are they set up to just be a huge disappointment, like not only lose this game, but also lose the 8th place game too? Or does Minnesota maybe have enough to still crack in?
I think the drama surrounding the team might get them out of the playoff picture completely, but they do still have Cat and Anthony Edwards over there. And those two can, offensively light up teams. Anthony Edwards could probably beat a team by himself, if he's on. So I don't think it's going to be such like a walk in the park for either the Lakers or whoever they face in the next playoff playing game. But the one thing that I do find funny is LeBron was like the biggest detractor of the play-in tournament, and he has been in the play-in ever since they, ever since they introduced it.
Curse of
And
the
one
bubble.
Yeah, in the bubble. Yeah, like so, and he hated it, and it's like, but bro,
Yeah.
It's so funny to me that
You'd be on the golf course already.
If anything, they made it so you could just be in.
Yeah.
Right. But I do agree with Shad. The retooling of the Lakers has fixed their floor spacing. With Brody there, it was like impossible for them to space the floor. It was like kind of comical sometimes how teams were guarding them, and now they have to guard that team honestly. D'Lo is back in LA, so and he's a crafty player. He can space the floor. He does a lot of good things. And the Lakers are going to be a tough out for anyone they face too, and if they stay healthy, and that's the biggest thing.
Greg, Shad, any thoughts on Minnesota's chances, whether that's in this game or going forward?
I think Minnesota, kind of blew their chances with that last game, with McDaniels, hurting his hand and being out, and then Rudy Gobert, being suspended for this one. Even though the stats really don't say, what Rudy Gobert has been doing is impactful. Just his presence, being a 3-time, defensive player of the year, he gets a lot of rebounds. He alters shots. He gets a lot of blocks. He could, get some putbacks on the offensive glass. I think that, Hurts, that's that's probably, a good 12 points and a good 12 rebounds at least, and probably another 10 points that he's altering. So I think that hurts, with the Minnesota Timberwolves. I also think that the Timberwolves, they just don't have, the chemistry as they had last year. They don't have, I guess they don't have like energy. They don't have like the Pat Bev type of people who could, kind of rev them up for, a 1 or 2 game stretch like last year. Ant-Man, he's good. He's, turning into a bona fide superstar. And but I just don't think he could do it alone. I don't think Cat has, been the greatest this year since he's been injured for a lot of it. So he's not going to be, in mid-season form, like all the other superstars on the Lakers. So I do think that I think they probably keep it close to, single digits, but I just don't think, I think they have too much going against them to, beat the Lakers. And the Lakers have been hot, over the last couple of weeks, and the Timberwolves have still been, pretty much average. So I'm gonna go with the Lakers.
I'd like to personally address the Spanish-speaking viewers of our podcast towards Minnesota. Adios, amigos. Adios. That's how I feel about them. Listen, I agree with James and Shad touched as well. I do agree with Edwards has become a superstar. Love his game. Their emotional maturity has been questioned for years. I mean, if you didn't just get a front row seat to that this weekend, I mean, the last possible thing, and you could construe it as, hey, highly competitive, and I get all that, but when you're the game before the playoffs and this unravels like that, come on. I mean, Gobert, where there's smoke, there's fire. He has a history of being completely immature, back to the COVID year with Mitchell. I cannot place stock in a team that shows such deplorable behavior. I mean, I understand McDaniels is frustrated. He breaks his hand. I don't see it. I mean, the Lakers, as much as we know, I'm anti-Lakers. I think the Lakers take care of them. And, looking ahead, sure, could they win that 8-9 game? Yes. But I'm envisioning New Orleans, and I'll take Brandon Ingram, and that team showed resolve last year without Zion in the playoffs. Good coaching depth. I go right back to them again. I think Minnesota is right back to the drawing board again. Long-term, Edwards does appear to be that guy, but I don't see how you turn that around in 2 days and everything's fine and dandy. I don't see it. So bye-bye. Adios.
Anthony Edwards has to get out of Minnesota.
Already?
They ruined the franchise by trading for Rudy.
But hey, one thing though, they'll be worth the watch because I don't discount there's another fist fight in the next 2 days anyway. So Gobert's out versus the Lakers, but when he comes back, who knows?
The NBA?
Yeah.
So let's talk about the next playing game. 2 teams that have seemed to underachieve this year. The Atlanta Hawks, led by Trae Young, and the Miami Heat, led by Jimmy Butler and the boys. This matchup, history-wise, the Heat normally come out on top. They eliminated Trae Young last year from out of the playoffs. So I think Trae's looking for revenge, but all of the drama that's been going on with Atlanta, coaching change, the new additions not seeming to work as well. I can't really call this game. I think Miami comes out on top, but I want to go to the guest experts. How do we feel about this matchup? Shad, let's start with you.
I think this game is probably going to be a blowout. I think Miami just has experience and they play, pretty good defense. They have Jimmy Butler, who seems to be, almost like Michael Jordan 2.0 when it comes to these big games. I wouldn't be surprised if he scored, 40 and, got 12 rebounds and 8 assists, just based on what we've seen of him in the playoffs. I don't know, with Atlanta, I just always felt like they were just the average team that got lucky in the playoffs a couple of years ago and made it to the conference finals just based on other teams around them imploding. And Trae Young getting a little bit, hot. They do have, a little bit more talent, this year with Murray, but I feel like they just have a bunch of overrated players on their team. My opinion, I think if they lose this game, which I think they will, they just kind of need to blow it up.
Yeah.
They need to, get rid of, pretty much everybody except Trae Young. They need to get rid of like Capella, Collins, all these people that they, probably I think they gave big contracts to, and just start over, maybe get a couple draft picks, some good draft picks, some people you give away, get some lottery picks over the years, because they just feel like average to me. They just like, yeah, you'll make the playoffs, like 7, 8 seed, maybe as high as a 6, but they'll never be real contenders just because I don't know, they have a bunch of B and C players, and Trae Young is good, but I don't think he is a bona fide superstar. He's like borderline superstar in my book, which means he's probably a better number 2, like on a good contending team. So
Yeah.
I'm gonna roll with the Miami Heat. I think they win big. I might bet the alternate spread on this game, and they win, by double digits. I believe it's -5 right now for Miami, so I would bet -10 if I could.
Actually, the dog,
Who's the dog?
Miami.
Really? I saw last they were up like they were at -5. Okay.
No, Miami's the favorite in that.
Oh, yes, they are. I read it.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I thought I was going to have to go back to the vodka after that statement.
Thankfully,
Thankfully, I'm with Shad, and I go back to water now. No, I agree. Both obviously disappointing seasons. Miami, I mean, to what he just touched on. I mean, give me Jimmy Butler in that game period. I mean, he's a proven playoff performer. I think the maturity, being at home, and quite frankly, the lackluster performance of the Hawks this year. I mean, if the Hawks have to go down as Dejounte Murray was a huge addition. This has to be one of the most disappointing teams in the league. And I mean, for all intents and purposes, why would I expect them to go on the road and beat Jimmy Butler Miami when they've not been able to do so effectively all year? So I'm kind of with Chad. I think this is, whereas some of these playing games can be entertaining, I don't really see this as one of them. And, I even saw some recently. I don't know how much credibility there is to this, but I think Atlanta, you're hearing rumors that there's a possibility that they may even look to move Trae Young now. And I think they're at a point where you maybe give it another year, but this obviously, this combo as contrived is not working. I mean, they on paper, they should have been a lot better than playing in this game. So I think Atlanta this year is cooked, and I think Miami sails into that next round.
What a team of turmoil.
Also, I want to shout out the addition of Kevin Love to Miami. I think that was a big pickup for them as well.
Agreed.
This was a hard game for me to think of too, because these teams are very much on opposite tracks this year.
Yeah.
Whereas like Miami started off the season very, very high, and they were doing very well, and here they are in the play-in tournament. Now, granted, you look at all the teams in the play-in tournament, they're the best record-wise, but still, the fact that they're even in the playoff tournament from where they were at the start of the season is a bit of a head-scratcher. And then the Hawks, they shouldn't even be here at all. They fired their head coach in the middle of the year. We all thought that Nate McMillan was a good hire last year. That he deserved being extended, and now they're in complete flux. And if there's trade rumors about Trae at some point in the semi near future, that's just bad. And it's kind of like it looked like down, up, and now back down. So this is just, I don't like. Do you trust? Do you just trust players that have been there, or do you trust a little bit of youthful exuberance? Because they did get a little bit of a pop from changing the head coach out for whatever reason that was.
Yeah.
I mean, part thing for me in this game as well as Atlanta. I think especially in the playoffs, and let me use a reference. Remember when the Knicks a few years back went in? Speaking of, they played Atlanta. The Knicks went into that playoff series. Once you get to the playoff series itself, it's going to be played differently. whereas the Knicks' lack of scoring, I think in the Hawks, their lack of defense, that's going to get exposed completely. Miami has shown an acumen to lock teams down when they need to in the past. And I think that alone, I think Miami runs roughshod over them because of that. Atlanta's team's completely disjointed.
So you're turning in your DeJounte Murray president fan club.
No, I love DeJounte Murray. I think sometimes in a team, we don't know, when you add new elements to a team, the chemistry, it's tough to say how that works, right? I mean, it's an inexact science. If every team got it, they'd win it. Look at the Nets, that blew up. So, I don't put this single-handedly on Trae Young or Murray, or just for whatever reason the combo hasn't worked.
I had so much fun gambling with you guys over the NCAA tournament. I want to bring that back a little bit. What's the biggest lock between these 4 teams Tuesday night? I was corrected before, so that is Heat -5 over the Hawks with a total of 226.5. And the Lakers are giving a whopping 8 points over the disjointed Wolves. And that total is somehow even higher, 231.5. So what's the biggest lock out of this, out of Tuesday night's playing games?
Like I said before, I think it's the Miami Heat -5.
And you'll tease it.
I'll if I could tease it, I would, but I'd do the alternate spread. I think they're going to win by double digits. I just don't think Atlanta, is as good as their record, and their record is average. They're 41-41. I think they're a team that, probably as good as probably should only won like 32 games, even though they won 41. They just got too many role players. Everybody in that team is a role player besides Trae Young. So DeJounte Murray, I think he's kind of overrated. DeAndre Hunter, Bogdanovich, John Collins, Capella. They got like Sadiq Bey now and Okonkwo, whatever, how do you say his name? I know I butchered that. But just people like that, it's like, all right, if that was like the core of your team, would you honestly say that your team is like a playoff contender or even making the playoffs? No. This team they probably overachieved what they had, to tell you the truth. So, and Miami, like I said, they have, Michael Jordan 2.0. They have Tyler Hero. They have they have Bam. They got 3 people that I feel like are better than just about everybody on their team, maybe except Trae. They're miles ahead of everybody else, not including people like Lowry and Strus and other people. I feel like if you rated them, if you ranked all the players 1 through 15, I think Miami probably has 11 of them, of the top 15 players in this game.
Got you.
So your lock is to take the Heat to cover the point spread and jack it up some.
Yeah, if you could somehow double your money, triple your money, something like that, by giving an alternate, spread by double digits, I would say go ahead and do it.
James the Jet, what you got? Looking at a lock?
Yeah, I'm looking right now. Let's see.
Big money.
Big money. Let me see. Dang. Can I pick like player points?
Oh,
Something
a
like
prop bet.
Yeah, can I do a prop bet?
Now you're gonna make Greg dig a little bit.
I'm gonna do LeBron to score 25 plus. Anthony Edwards 20 plus. and Los Angeles Lakers money line, I guess. I don't know. I'm not a betting man.
Greg, help him out. What you got for a lock?
I'm actually going to go with Chad on this. I think the odds and the line. So Miami at -5. I'm with him. I don't think this is a close game. Miami, quick glance. 27-14 at home. Atlanta 17-24 on the road. That is pretty clear to me. I think they'll cover the 5, so I would take Miami -5. And if I want to ensure that further, they're -200 on the money line. I personally think that should be higher. I think Miami is definitely going to win this game, and it gives the best value for the discrepancy in the talent level of the two teams. So I think it's Miami Heat through and through, every which way. Going to South Beach.
Would you guys consider parlaying the two favorites?
I would parlay like the -10 I said with Miami with the Lakers money line win. Yes, I don't think I would do the spread because that is 8 is still kind of big.
Yeah, I'm in agree with you there, Shad. I mean, do I think the Lakers win that game? Yes. 8 is very high. And, I always try to remind myself, you do have two bona fide, big time players in Anthony Edwards and Cat if he's good to go. So, I mean, do I completely discount it? I think personally, I don't think that's a bad option, but I feel far more confident on the Miami side of it. Yeah.
Right, and I just always feel like the Lakers never blow anybody out. I feel like all their games are always close for some reason. Maybe that's just me.
No, Shad. But even Friday night, like to your point, Friday night, I watched that entire game against Phoenix's complete. Okogie was the only starter, and that's a fringe starter to begin with, good player, but he was the only person for the Suns, only one of their starters playing, and they still were up 7 mid-third quarter. It's like I'm with you on that. The Lakers, call it their age, call it their who knows? They get lackadaisical at that time, and if they played a good team that night, I think they would have gotten buried. So I'm with you on that. They're still inconsistent at times. I think they win, but there's a part of me that's buyer beware on that. Yeah, I'm going Pat Riley.
Well, we're gonna wrap this one up, and we'll talk about the other two games tomorrow night. And make sure sub to the Hoops Boys podcast on YouTube for constant updates and analysis throughout the playoff season. Let's tie this one up and we'll sync up again. Talk about the other games. Kobe.